Welcome back. This time we're talking about the games I'm looking forward to in 2025. I hope this will be a nice little rundown of information about these games, and that there might even be a few in here that you didn't know about yourself. As always, any engagement on the video helps, but with that out of the way, let's get into the honorable mentions first. These are the honorable mentions, so they get less of my attention. That means they didn't make the list. Now some commenter will be pissed. I liked 10 trailers more, but these were great. That's why they're honorable and not just lightweight. But this video can only be so long. I remind you this with my fun new song. You might hate my opinion or you might agree, but it's all a matter of diversity. Whether you're full of joy or vitriol, go down to the comments and write it all. Now onto the list proper.
Hold me, never let me go. Am I dreaming? Questions.
At number 10, Mio, Memories in Orbit. This is a new game from the developer of the indie experience Shady Part of Me, which is not one that I've played before, but it definitely looks interesting from the trailer, how it plays with shadows. It's got a distinct art style, like you can see a pencil line motif going on. And it clearly seems to be another Metroidvania in the vein of Ori and the Blind Forest. There are even moves in the moveset that are reminiscent of Ori, like how Mio can dash through an enemy to keep a jump going. But we also see that Mio has the ability to float or to climb up walls. The music in the trailer is ambient and mysterious, which ties in with the Lost Memories trope that this game incorporates. From the game's website, we read, "A mesmerizing, intertwined, decaying world awaits. Play Mio, a nimble robot with extraordinary abilities, and unravel the mysteries of The Vessel, an enormous technological ark overgrown with lush vegetation and machines gone rogue. Nobody knows why the Pearls, the vessel's AI caretakers, have ceased functioning. Forgotten by all, the vessel faces imminent shutdown. Dive into its depths to revive its lost memories as you unravel your past and destiny." So yeah, another case of like the main character doesn't have any idea who they are and what's going on, and they're trying to figure it out as they journey through this world and defeat enemies, overcome platforming obstacles by finding new abilities as you go along. So it just looks like a solid experience all around. We saw it revealed at a Nintendo Direct back in 2024, and it's coming to all platforms sometime in 2025.
Scrolling through the park with the sarsaparilla. For me, if I'm right.
But speaking of the Nintendo, our next game is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. This is a game that I have a lot of first-hand experience with. I really didn't need to dive too deeply into the trailer or the game's website to get new information out of this, because I've played the whole thing. In fact, there's VODs of that on the channel. And I love the Wii U original. Truly, I put a few hundred hours into it, and it was my first Xenoblade game. And I went into it knowing it's the black sheep of the Xenoblade series, because it's not a mainline numbered game. This one is more focused on exploring the open world, dealing with side content, even a bit of online multiplayer. And if you ever just want to take a break from the main story or the side story, there's always squad missions that you can help contribute towards, help your division get those points. And you can bring in avatars of other players by recruiting them through this special terminal. So yeah, a lot of connectivity in this game compared to other Xenoblade games, even though it's not a proper MMO or anything. Definitive Edition is a chance for them to fix some of the few issues that the Wii U original had. A big one would be font size. I really hope that it's either bigger by default or that there's options to make it bigger, because it was a little hard to read some of the stuff in the Wii U original. Unfortunately, the reveal trailer did not even give us subtitles for Elma or Lynn's narration, so I didn't have a chance to do any direct comparison. There are also some mechanics in the original game that I feel warranted a bit more explanation than they got, particularly how overdrive works and the augment system. which are systems you really need if you're going to get into the nitty-gritty of 100% in the game. Honestly, it's a very challenging game from a combat perspective if you're not doing a bunch of the side stuff. In my Twitch playthrough of the game, I tried to crit path the main story a bit more than I usually would, and that led to a number of times where I just felt underleveled for certain challenges, or had to do stuff off stream in order to make sure that I could resume the story the next time. And like, yeah, you probably shouldn't play the game if you're not willing to dive into the side stuff, because that is where the bulk of the narrative takes place. But that said, you know, it's a pretty challenging game, so these extra mechanics that go kind of unexplained for the most part could do with some more options there. I don't want the game to suddenly bog us down with tutorials like, say, Mario and Luigi Brothers Ship's opening hours, but there's got to be some sort of balance that can be struck. At the very end of the trailer, and the game's website confirms this, that we are getting new story elements. At the very end of the trailer, anyone who played the Wii U original will recognize that scene from a cliffhanger ending to the game. I won't say exactly what that entails, but it seems like we might get some sort of resolution to this long-awaited cliffhanger. The game is slated for March 20th, 2025 on the Switch, and something interesting I found out on the website is that only if you buy the digital version of the game, you get a free 2-week trial of Nintendo Switch Online, so that you can try out the game's features for squads or recruitment or other online connectivity options.
Plucking chickens, picking out a mate. Guess I'll marry 8.
Next up, Pokemon Legends ZA. We know very, very little because we've only had one teaser trailer for this game, that it's coming to Switch in 2025. Clearly, it is set in the Kalos region, that being the generation from Pokemon X and Y. The ZA in the logo is clearly a tie-in to Zygarde and Lumiose Tower, represented by the A shape. But the name ZA also conveys a sense that we are going back in time. There was some debate when this trailer came out, at least between me and my friends, about whether this game takes place in the past, like Pokemon Legends Arceus, or in the future. And there is room to interpret this as being futuristic because they are using this digital-looking screen for the entire trailer as the blueprint for Lumiose City is coming together. And it is written in the trailer, Lumiose City Redevelopment Plan. Not development, redevelopment. So if you interpret this as taking place after X and Y, then okay, Lumiose City is being redeveloped and we're starting with the original Lumiose City. But I interpret ZA as going from the end back to the beginning. Like in the alphabet, if you start at Z and go back to A, that's backwards. So to me that conveys that we are still going back in the past, but one theory that might work is if we're going back to the time that Kalos was involved in a war. Urban redevelopment plans often take place in blighted areas, and if Lumiose City was an established area back in the wartime, but it faced severe damage as a casualty of the war, then this redevelopment plan could be to restore it into a new, prosperous place for people in Pokemon, and turning it into what we see in X and Y. I think redeveloping the city is a fine setup for a Pokemon Legends game, where you're going out into these open zones, collecting resources and Pokemon. So I just imagine that every time you come back to Lumiose City as a hub area, you are taking those resources you've collected or those Pokemon you've caught and putting them to use in building up this city. And that'd be a great little progression to see happen over time. Next, we have Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Now, be careful Googling Clair Obscur because there was a critically acclaimed movie in 2016 that went by that same name. However, this is not a video game adaptation of that movie in the slightest. This is very different. It just uses the same name, Clair Obscur, which is French and translates roughly to a shading style that is used in painting. but it literally translates to clear and obscure or light and dark. This is a debut game from its studio, the first one that we are seeing from them. And I want to show you a bit of this team's website because they do this little charming thing where they name off each person's favorite game, and I'm very hopeful based on some of the inspirations they have because a lot of these are games that I also enjoy. Now, going through the trailer, we open on a shot that looks to take place in France because I can make out what seems to be the Arc de Triomphe but split in half. And in the distance we see the number 34 shining, but then it ticks down to a newly painted 33. The character in the trailer tells us that whenever you see that glowing number, everyone of that age is killed off. There is someone named the Paintress who is in charge of this number, and there is always a mission of people trying to kill her so that no one else has to die. But this mission is seen as hopeless and futile because obviously no one has ever completed it so far. So, solid enough story setup. It does remind me, to a degree, of some of the themes that we see in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I mean, it's not a one-to-one copy-paste of that plot, but tying into, like, a short life cycle and trying to prevent this from being the way of the world. However, unlike Xenoblade, this is clearly a turn-based RPG. We see a bit of the combat menus showing options like items, skills, regular attack, aim. Some skills we even get to see some status ailments that we'll be able to inflict, like applying Mark. I assume that marks a target as, like, any attacks will be focused on them. Another attack says a critical hit will generate 1 additional charge, although I don't know what we're charging in that case, and I'd be interested to find out. But a few words pop up when attack animations are playing out. At one point, we see one of our main characters jump to avoid an attack. At another point, we see a parry. Another point, an outright dodge. And then at one point, one character set up something called a gradient counter. So, we've had counters in other RPGs, of course, but this one using the word gradient makes me think they're really trying to play into the paint motif that they have going on. Which, again, ties back to the name Clair Obscur, translating to chiaroscuro. I may have pronounced that wrong, but it's light and shading in painting technique. So they're really trying to lean into this whole paintress thing, and I sense a lot of thematic cohesion that's going to come as a result of that. Yeah, and the game also features QuickTime events that are kind of like Paper Mario or Xenoblade, where a button prompt will pop up, and with the right timing you hit the button. I assume that's to do extra damage, or even to make the attack hit at all. Who knows? But I think it looks promising. We saw it at an Xbox Game Showcase in 2024, but it will also be coming to PS5 and PC in 2025. Back in August, Nintendo held an Indie World, and one of the standout games from that Indie World was a little gem called Morsels. And when I first saw this trailer and looked through it, part of me was thinking that this was a callback to Cubivore, in that as you play through the game, you were taking parts of the enemies you were beating and using them to evolve. But upon rewatching the trailer and going through the game's website for this video, it seems more like, hey, you can choose a creature, a la Pokemon, and they will evolve. So the way that they're changing forms is just evolution. We even see an evolution screen in the trailer, so it really should have occurred to me then. But you play as a mouse, you're trying to defeat a cat corporation, and you might be wondering, but we don't play as the mouse. You know, in the trailer, we just play as the creatures. No, it's because the mouse is like the Pokemon trainer to these creatures. Now, obviously, this is very different from Pokemon because this is a roguelike twin-stick shooter. And you're going around, and you're like, yes, there is evolution a la Pokemon, but it doesn't otherwise play like the game in any way. The Steam listing informs us that we can switch between the morsels we've caught at any time. This is a debut game from the studio Furcula under the publisher Annapurna, and it will release in February 2025 on Switch, PC, and PS5.
Where's the vibe, girl? Rock my world, girl. Ooh, yeah.
When I was putting this list together, I was surprised to find out just how many of these games were going to be a studio's first game. And it might be a stretch to say that here, because while this is from a new studio and it is their first game, it is comprised of people with a pretty good history in the game industry. It's just that now they've come together and formed a new studio called Ivy Road. The team comprises of Davey Renan from the Stanley Parable, Carla Zimonja from BioShock 2, and C418, the composer of Minecraft, behind the music. Wanderstop is their debut game. They call it cozy, and that you are making tea for a variety of customers, and you need to patiently make the tea, go through all the steps to cultivate the ingredients, put the drink together, talk with customers. It's supposed to be a relaxing, fun time, or at least so they say. But when you have someone writing on the team from the Stanley Parable, there's going to be some sort of twist. If you watch the reveal trailer, right at the very end, you get some sort of nod to the fact that there is more buried underneath the surface of this game. In later trailers, it becomes a bit clearer that, hey, the person working at this tea shop is a fallen warrior, and something clearly happened to them. And working at this tea shop is their way of coping with that, but they don't want to be there. They don't want to do the work to cope. So I think this game has a very clear message to send on the mental health front, and you can look forward to it on March 11th on Steam and PS5. Obligatory Metroid Prime 4 reference. Fans have been waiting for Metroid Prime 4 for a long time. Me, I've only recently played the first 2 Prime games, and I'm working on getting 3 done before the release of 4 this year. If you don't know, this game was announced back in 2017, but then restarted development and moved from whichever studio was working on it originally to Retro Studios. Surprisingly, they were not the ones working on it originally, because they were the studio behind Metroid Prime 1 to 3. Now, we do have a little bit to glean about this game from Metroid Prime Remastered, and that's the controls. Because the last few Prime games, Prime 3 and Prime Trilogy, the re-release of 1 and 2, well, those hit the Wii, and they made use of the pointer controls. And so that's how I played Metroid Prime 1 and 2 originally, was on my Wii U, because the Metroid Prime Trilogy, before the Wii U shop closed down, that was a nice, cheap way to get into the series. Now, I did pretty well with the pointer controls, but I did play Prime Remastered on Switch, on casual, just to see how the game was updated. And besides being visually stunning, and the newest Metroid Prime trailer, shows us this for 4 as well. But besides that, they really nailed the controls. There are so many control options for you to pick from, and honestly, I'm surprised after playing the first 2 games with motion at how well I took to the dual stick controls on the Pro Controller. So I think we're looking at a nice, visually splendid, fluid game coming here. The only controls that we can really confirm from the Metroid Prime 4 trailer is that you can pick your missile launcher using right on the D-pad. And the Morph Ball is back. We know the Morph Ball is back. Now, the plot of this one, the space pirates seem to be working with Psylux, and he's accompanied by a few mock droids. And apparently Psylux was teased for this game at the end of the spin-off Metroid Prime Federation Force on the DS, but originated from Metroid Prime Hunters on the DS. So, I am mildly interested to see how that all ties together, but really I'm just looking for more of that classic Metroid Prime experience, building up my arsenal of abilities with Samus, exploring this new world, and just seeing what more the game has to offer. I love the concept behind the original Crypt of the Necrodancer, it being this roguelike dungeon crawler where everything moves to the beat. You move to the beat tile by tile, so do all the enemies around you, and as you learn the patterns, then you get to figure things out, and you have different weapons that act in different ways. But honestly, I tried the original Crypt of the Necrodancer, and I was only barely able to beat the first of the 4 procedurally generated dungeons. Like, honestly, it wasn't the best first impression. Cadence of Hyrule came around and changed that considerably. I liked how that one, it generated the one Hyrule map, and it is different from player to player. There's different seeds of the game. But there wasn't this procedurally generated on-the-fly stuff. It felt like it was easier to learn the patterns. Honestly, it was just a brighter, more colorful game that made it a bit easy to interpret what was happening on the screen, because the original Crypt, it takes place in a crypt. It's all dark and brown and stuff. So I thought Cadence of Hyrule was a great improvement. Also, it had permanent unlockable upgrades, so even if you did die, you weren't losing all the progress like in the original. All that to say, Rift of the Necrodancer is coming in 2025. I demoed this one at PAX East and had a decent time with it. Now, this one is a more focused experience. It's not really a dungeon crawler. It's got some Rhythm Heaven-like mini-games. It's got some boss battles. And the main draw is the Rift tracks. It uses a Guitar Hero layout, but it uses the gameplay from Crypt and Cadence. And apparently, upon reading through the game's website, there's an editor for this mode. So, with a dedicated enough fan base, we're looking at like a stream of endless rhythm content, and that is very promising to me indeed. Love rhythm games. It will be releasing February 5th, 2025 on Steam. A demo is available now on Steam, and it is coming to Switch, but with a release date to be determined. Now, Rift of the Necrodancer was a fun demo at PAX, but it wasn't my favorite demo at PAX East 2024. This is my PAX East 2024 badge. And since I did that Nintendo Labo panel, it's got the thing down here. So this is a fun little memento for me. But on the side here, I want to acknowledge this little sticker that I've got. And it's a little bent from being stored away so long. But that is Corgi Butt Power. Next on this list is a Corgi's Cozy Hike, my absolute favorite demo from PAX. This is being made by a two-person team, and I got to talk to them a bit after playing the demo, and they have very clear inspirations here from games such as Banjo-Kazooie, a little bit of Crash Bandicoot, really any 3D platformer. And yeah, this is going to be a smaller game for sure, but I find it to be one that is highly memorable. You just get to wander around and do all these fun things using your various platforming powers as a Corgi. So you've got running. The Corgi Butt Power thing is a nod to the Butt Slam, which is a common feature of platformers as well. And I can't even begin to imagine what else I'm going to be able to do in this game. One feature is that just like a real Corgi, you can... well, normally I would tell other people to eat shit if they didn't like it, but you can do that yourself in this game. Yeah, I honestly can't go on too much about this one because there's not as much for me to talk about, but it's one of the better feeling games that I played. As it's just got such a good spirit, and hey, added a little bonus here. Really great bonus for you. The team behind this game donates proceeds to dog shelters. So, there you go. You get to play a cozy game about an animal while also helping animals. But what is the number one most anticipated game of the guy whose logo is a Professor Layton hat and is named after the 6th Professor Layton game? Could it be the 8th Professor Layton game? Okay, I know some of you are about to get on my case and tell me, this is the 7th one. Catriel Layton doesn't count as a Layton game. And to that I say, no. Sorry, just no. That one counts as a game. And like, yeah, it's not the same as the original. It's a different protagonist. It really didn't have much of a story completion except in the anime adaptation of the game that came after. And it was definitely more comedy focused than like story with a narrative through line focused. But hey, it existed, it had some solid puzzles, and it's not like a terrible game. That said, Professor Layton in the New World of Steam promises to be a return to form, with the original characters from the game set in a new world. And instead of some sort of comedy spin-off story, we have a new central mystery against the ghost of a gunslinger who threatens to halt all progress being made in this new steampunk world. See, Luke moved to America, and in this game, Professor Layton is taking the journey, and so we're leaving London, getting a brand new setting here, one that we didn't even get in the globe-trotting Azran Legacy game. And alright, this town is very much inspired by steampunk. Luke says that it's like the most urbanly developed town in America, and it's got all this technological progress happening, but I guess this gunslinger ghost has a little vendetta against that. So during this story, I'm sure we're going to be uncovering what really is this ghost, what is behind it, what are the motivations. If you go watch these trailers, there's also some really nice soundtrack samples in there as well. Looking forward to hearing more from them. The game promises the largest number of puzzles in the Layton series to date, which would have to be a lot of puzzles, and apparently they are being made by a group known as Quiznok. And I don't know them offhand, but apparently they've got like 2 million subscribers on YouTube and are really good at generating puzzles that will educate people on different things. But of course, this is a Japanese group we're talking about, so I probably wouldn't be able to follow along too well. But everyone online says they're like highly acclaimed, some really good puzzle solvers who are still able to scale back puzzles for a more casual audience. So if they make good on that, then I'm all in. A 2023 teaser trailer from Level 5 Vision 2023 number 2 actually showed an example of one of the puzzles in the game, and it didn't go to a separate puzzle screen. It was actually just taking place in the overworld. I thought that was a nice little innovation for the series. I think we see some puzzle screens in the later trailers, so not every puzzle is going to be like that, but still, for that amount of immersion, I gotta give the game some credit. So yeah, 100% personal bias for a series that I loved and want to see more good things happen for. But that is why Professor Layton in the New World of Steam is number 1 on my list for 2025, assuming Level 5 can maintain that actual release window this time. We'll see if it needs to show up on my 2026 list instead. Thanks for watching. Let me know about your own most anticipated games down below. Consider liking and subscribing if you made it this far, and I'll see you around. Bye.